hope of cycling, a mantle he takes from Greg LeMond, whose fall from the top came as swiftly as Armstrong's rise.
I'm willing to take the role. You have to have the results to back it up. And I'm willing to get the results in, and I'm willing to push it in America. Listen, I'm an American. I'd love to be in America. So if the bike race is an excuse to be in America, then I'm willing to take it. But the bottom line is I'm a competitor, and I still like training hard and going out and kicking ass. I like that. And I got a lot more ass to kick, so. I mean, in that sense, I have to look forward to that. I have to look forward to going back to Europe and doing the big races and winning.
Look out, Will.
Yeah, look out.
And the possible route to victory for Lance Armstrong, well, it all begins tomorrow. The riders go out by transport to Dover. They race back into Wilmington, a ride of 74 miles.
Stage 2 along the northern border of Maryland, finishing up in Hagerstown. 115 miles, a long one.
Still no mountains as the riders move away from Fredericksburg down to Richmond. It's a nice town, and we always go there. It could be a day for the sprinters.
Waving goodbye to the capital city of Richmond, we head west, and the hills begin to loom ahead.
But as we move to Monday, it's a ride from Salem to Roanoke. It's a time trial, an individual test against the clock of 23 miles. This year, though, it's over the hills, and the big challenge will be the climb of the 12 o'clock knob. Armstrong must perform well here.
Stage 6, a serious test of 138 miles, and the first of many Category 1 climbs along the route of the Tour DuPont. This one up at Mountain Lake, and finally a finish in the college town of Blacksburg, Virginia.
Lance Armstrong, well, he showed us last year he could climb. Now he's got to keep on climbing because Stage 7 goes from Witherville to Beech Mountain. Armstrong's happy on the big ones, and this is 125 miles long.
From Banner Elk to Asheville, North Carolina, 125 miles, and this is the killer stage. Finishing up the beautiful Grove Park Inn. Well, the scenery will be nice, but the road will be very tough.
And in fact, Greg LeMond has already checked it out as part of his pre-race preparation, but the race goes on. The 9th day, 131 miles, taking them from Asheville to Charlotte. A prize there at the end of $10,000.
And Stage 10, a relatively short stroll of 75.5 miles and nearly flat as we head down to High Point, North Carolina, the Piedmont Triad.
And so to the time trial day, will Greg LeMond be a feature? He used to be king of the time trial. That's how he won his Tour de France by 8 seconds back in 1989. The distance is similar too, 16.6 miles, taking the riders to the end of the 1994 Tour DuPont. Of the Tour DuPont, we're looking back now at the prologue time trial last night, and this the world champion Lance Armstrong making his start, and the rain is still coming down. Best time now being held by Bobby Julich. His time of 6 minutes 27, the target now for Lance Armstrong as he goes away to the cheers of the crowd here in King Street, Wilmington, Delaware. The course is treacherous, the roads are glacial. Even the left-hand corner, which goes off to the King Street here, has claimed 1 or 2 riders in the slippery conditions. Concentration, clear spectacles just to keep the water out of the eyes of the world champion. Tricky left-hand bend, and Armstrong taking no chances at all.
With many of the stars of the U.S. amateur team having departed to the pro ranks, now the amateur team is filled with new faces. 21-year-old Tyler Hamilton coming in with a very fast time and working hard on Monkey Hill. It seems as though the Stars and Stripes are still in full force.
Faced a British champion, Malcolm Elliott, 13 wins in the United States this year. He'd trade them all now for a win in the big one, the Tour DuPont. Concentration, a deep breath, out of the start house, and now he too is searching to match or better the time of Bobby Julich. Further round the course, leading Brandywine Park, the world champion Lance Armstrong, unhappy and slipping along on the cobblestones. Despite the rain on Monkey Hill, the crowd has turned out as ever before. last few meters to the top of the climb, the cheers from the crowd, the world champion can see the summit. His time, though, is at this point slower than Bobby Julich. Good clean roads towards the finish now, but Bobby Julich is the man of the moment. Brian Drebber's with him.
Bobby, good ride out there, man. Frankie's time stood up for a long time. How did you do that?
I don't know. I've just been really psyched for this time trial. I've done it 3 years, and ever since I was 18, I've just memorized the whole course, and I don't know how many times I've gone over it in my head. The rain threw a little wrench in my preparation, but I think being able to adapt, that's a sign of a good athlete, and I just went with it, you know. I mean, we got dealt these cards, this bad weather, but hey, we got a race anyway, and I went as fast as I could, made a few mistakes, but the whole time my coach was yelling to me I had the best time, so that was motivation in itself right there. I just want to get close, get through the prologue, you know, because it was dangerous. I feel that my form is really good, and it's just time now to sit back and wait and see what the mountains deal out.
Get through the prologue, Bobby. You're leading it. And Malcolm Elliott, the British champion, out on Monkey Hill, is trying to match his time of 6 minutes and 27 seconds. Elliott, too, is exiting the pain.
Lance Armstrong continuing to tiptoe around the course in contrast to the risks being taken by some of the other riders. Armstrong with a lot to lose and little to gain with a victory in this prologue. He has raced in bad conditions this year, but bad conditions are not a place to take a chance.
In the start house, Greg LeMond, 3 Tours de France, 2 World Championships. And the last time he won a race, 1992 Tour DuPont. He also won the prologue on that occasion. And still the biggest cheer reserved for the man who has dominated American and world cycling for 14 years. Greg LeMond is on course.
For Greg LeMond, it's a time to take risks and a time to take chances because he is a man who has a lot to gain. Young Tyler Hamilton of the United States amateur team comes in with a blazing fast time, and as he posts 6 minutes 32, would finish eventually 6th in the top 10 among these pros. He's got to be happy with that.
And Lance Armstrong, never happy with the course and always riding with a little bit of caution. And on this day to win, you couldn't afford to do that. His time was going to be a little bit slower than Bobby Julich, who could now believe himself because he had at least beaten a champion of the world in this race. Up to the line, to the cheers of the crowd, Armstrong hits it, and the time for him, 6 minutes and 43 seconds. Good enough for only 25th place.
For Greg LeMond, the time splits are good news as he powers up Monkey Hill. A slightly smaller gear, turning the pedals over a little quicker. Here the problem is whether to use a small gear and lose traction or whether to use a big gear and bog down.
LeMond, riding with great skill, is out on the course, but Raul Alcala still has to go through that sort of pain. He's watching the clock and he's waiting.
For Malcolm Elliott, his time looking very good indeed, approaching that of the young American Tyler Hamilton. Misses by 1 spot, same time, but 7th place.
The figure of Jamaluddin Abdu-Jafarov, not a great time trialist, but a man we'll see a lot of over the next 12 days. He's a fantastic sprint finisher. For him, this is a chore, and something he really wouldn't want to particularly do.
For Greg LeMond, the time splits have continued to be very good in this prologue time trial. The news that he got was good all along the course. And with good news comes even better effort. And LeMond sprinted in for the finish to the thrill of the crowd that lined the course in spite of the bad weather. It would not be a victory in this prologue time trial and the portent of things to come that has meant in this race. But for Greg LeMond, a time at 6 minutes 32, beating Hamilton and Elliott, and takes 5th place.
So LeMond was home, an eventual 6th place finish for him. He'd be happy with that. Vyacheslav Yekimov of Russia, now the leader of the Word Perfect team, makes his start. So Yekimov is on course. Le Mans should be happy with his ride. Let's join Brian Trevor with him.
You happy with that one?
Yeah, concerning the rain. DuPONT is my trailer. Also, so I'm pretty.
Feel good?
Yeah, legs are a little cold. Big legs. Yeah.
This is not the weather you came over here for, is it?
Oh, I had nice weather last week, though. It's okay. It's only a prologue.
We're looking at the end of the prologue time trial in the Tour DuPont yesterday, and this is the last man to start, Raul Alcala. His privilege is he was the winner of this race overall 1 year ago. Alcala now on a new team. He's left the Word Perfect squad. He's joined Team Motorola. It's a strong team. He carries a lot of responsibility.
Alcala's victory in the prologue time trial in 1990 led to an overall win at the end of the race. His runner-up finish in the prologue time trial last year to his own teammate led to taking that jersey and winning the race again.
Alcala beginning the assault on the course, the last of 112 riders. Just a couple of minutes ahead of him, Vyacheslav Yekimov, third this year in the classic race from Paris down to Nice. That's 1,000 kilometers. But he wasn't too happy on the cobblestones approaching Monkey Hill. His time checks were a little bit off the leaderboard. Bobby Julich was still the man at the top.
Raul Alcala taking one of those tough corners and finds a little puddle of water, a heartbeat skipped, and a moment of traction lost. But it seems as though with renewed effort, Alcala goes back to work. If a time trial prologue victory was to be his, he would have to avoid that kind of difficulty and beat this man, Yekimov, the brilliant amateur, now coming back on form as a pro.
Heading up King Street towards the finish, Vyacheslav Yekimov was not doing the time we really thought he would do. He was in fact going to finish this stage only in 11th place on the day. Bobby Julich wouldn't believe it, but he was still the leader with only one man to come.
And as Julich stood waiting for the most feared man on the time trial course, he had to have chewed his fingernails down to the quick. Raul Alcala's time splits coming back were good, very good indeed.
Bouncing off the cobblestones of Monkey Hill and up at the finishing line, Yekimov spotted it. 6 minutes, 35 seconds, 7th place, not good enough on this day. Alcala at least is going to better that.
And with Bobby Julich now assured of at least second place in this race, the tension grows even greater for the young man who has returned to the Tour DuPont after a one-year absence. But as the man, Raul Alcala, came to the line, it became obvious that Julich's spot would be one rung down on the podium, and that Alcala would once again stand on top.
Coming up to the finishing line, Alcala has done it again. Second last year, first this time. 6 minutes, 25 seconds, his ride for the course. 2 seconds better than Bobby Julich. He was the talking point. Andrea Perron was third. Frankie Andreu finished fourth. Greg LeMond was fifth. And on the general classification, Malcolm Elliott joins them on equal fifth. Bauer of Canada is there as well. Lance Armstrong is 21st, but Alcala's the man. And aren't these bike riders something special, the way they handle those machines in such extreme conditions? Raul Alcala now starting this tour in yellow, just like he finished the last one, Brian.
An amazing ride for Raul Alcala, considering he said he didn't even take that many risks, still ended up seconds better than young Bobby Julich, who watched this race on television a year ago. We've got some great stories, some terrific signs of life from Greg LeMond. What an impressive ride for him. And as much as I enjoyed the prologue, I enjoy this good weather even better.
Don't we all? And the riders certainly will. Raul Alcala now in yellow, and I would think that Lance Armstrong a little disappointed with his performance, but of course still very much in contention. Well, Raul Alcala in yellow, down at the start town in Dover. Indeed, and so to the quaint streets of Dover, and Raul Alcala leading this race now by a scant 2 seconds. Lance Armstrong, his teammate this year, wearing his white jersey as champion of the world. Perhaps better fortunes for him today on the ride back to Wilmington. And there's Bobby Julich. How must he feel, Brian?
22 years old and already a veteran of this Tour DuPont. What a great ride for him. Not as great as the career, perhaps, of Greg LeMond, but 3 spots better on the result.
And Ruben Veenstra, he won 2 stages of this race last year, including this stage. Would there be a repeat? And Malcolm Elliott, the champion of Great Britain, 13 wins under the belt this year.
Coors Light's man with the rocket is Scott McKinley talking to the GC contender there, Mike Engelman. And these are the lean, fast legs of Jamaluddin Abdul-Jabbarov, the terror of Tashkent.
And BMX riding, whoops-a-daisy, the ups and downs of the sport that really has caught the imagination.
Riders ready! Now, that's it.
And the rollout time, 112 riders now on the open roads and byways of Mid-Atlantic states as they start the 12-day trek down to Winston-Salem.
All eyes on Raul Alcala in the yellow jersey of the race leader. The sun shining down, and time for a chat on the field with some of his friends. Lance Armstrong also takes time for a word with Vibren Venstra, the man with the cheetah legs who won 2 stages and had 4 podium finishes a year ago.
And the pressure on, almost from the gun today. Only 22 miles covered in the first hour. This is Greg LeMond, twice the world champion, and the arrowhead at the front of the big pack indicates they're in action. And the big sprint to Delaware City for a small-time bonus, surprisingly won by Adrie van der Poel, the Dutchman, on the Koolstrop team. And equally surprisingly, too, Raul Alcala taking a 1-second bonus in 3rd place. The man in the middle was Frédéric Moncassin of the Word Perfect team. So Alcala, only halfway into the day stage, has increased his lead by a second. And trouble, too, at the back for the Team Motorola here, as we see now Steve Bauer taking a wheel change. And also Raul Alcala, another flat tire for him. This will cause trouble.
Bad fortune in the final dozen miles of the race and some unexpected frantic activity after a morning that started so easily, rather an early afternoon. Raul Alcala quickly back in motion, and Team Motorola having to go to work to pull their race leader back into the field.
In fact, it was a decision by Motorola to bring back all except 2 riders. They left up in the main field, Bauer and Armstrong. Everybody else fell back to help their leader in yellow back into the field. They got him back safely and saved the day. Then it came down to the big sprint finish. The Chevrolet Sheriffs were there too because they were thinking of Malcolm Elliott, but they should also be thinking of another rider, a man who's won here before. In the big battle on the left of the picture, Malcolm Elliott, but on the far right, Vibren Venstra, the man who won the stage last year, has done it again in Wilmington. So Venstra is the winner again. So Venstra has struck early again this year with victory on the stage into Wilmington. Elliott 2nd, Scott McKinley in 3rd place.
From a dozen miles or so from the finish, any trouble getting back?
Yeah, I was in the crash and my bike was broken, and there was no problem because all the team is stopped for me. I mean, the Motorola team is waiting for me in the last moment, and they catch the group again.
And the overall situation now, a 2-second advantage still, but it's Malcolm Elliott up into 2nd place. Bobby Julich slips down to 3rd. The yellow jersey remaining on the shoulders of Raul Alcala. Elliott is breathing down his neck, though, and a favourite for tomorrow. Welcome back to the Tour DuPont. Well, larger than life they may be, but on all of these professional racing cyclists, some of the best men in the world, and they're seeing some of the nicest countryside as well today. And why should he stop when he's trout fishing as the riders go by?
A beautiful meander, I believe, as you put it, to Hagerstown through the rural part of Maryland here, and the riders having a chance perhaps to look around a bit and enjoy the scenery, and another nice day as it turned out.
But not these riders, Brian, because this is an attack. The attacks have continued ever since we went over the first and only climb of the day, and this is a breakaway. They've built themselves a little lead now of 21 seconds. We saw the face there of Frans Massen of Holland. The rider looking over his shoulder there is Frankie Andreu himself, well up the overall classification, but more concerned about the whereabouts of his race leader, Raul Alcala. 5 riders, and Hagerstown is the next stop if they can hold off, but they can't. The field has come up under the impetus, in fact, of the Koolstrop team, because they want Venstra to win again.
And Raul Alcala, well, his yellow jersey chances will depend on being able to sprint in, too. And, well, he has sprinted, but not in the kind of melee that usually results at the end of a stage.
Well, this is the sort of action we've come to know in Hagerstown. The race has been here before. We've seen Sean Yates win so well here when he was the British champion. Now we know that Malcolm Elliott, also the new British champion, is in theory leading this race by just a second on the road. Will he be still leading it by the finish? Remember, there are more time bonuses to come. This is now an attack, and this is Scott Fortner leading it.
Fortner of the Saturn team. Team Saturn has been kind of quiet, although now the King of the Mountain jersey rests on the back of Brian Walton. These guys perhaps waiting for the hill. Will not Scott Fortner. He's charging along. And Kolstrop still marking him to set up Veenstra.
Hanging out in front, tempting anybody else who will join them. We now have Andy Bishop of Coors Light in the breakaway.
Along with Edwig van Hooijdonk, and the danger man, though, is Andrea Perron there of Pulte in the green and yellow jersey. He sits fourth on general classification and only 5 seconds behind Raul Alcala. This break is gaining time, and Perron, the danger man, the danger for the others is that he will take the yellow jersey. Andy Bishop drives the breakaway forward.
Andrea Perron in the yellow on the right. He really is one of the most outstanding riders of the year as a young professional. He's never been afraid to take on the best in the world, and in a race like the Tour DuPont, he must be considered a danger. An Olympic silver medal, a World Championship gold medal in the team time trial, already the highlight of a sparkling amateur career.
The breakaway being marked by Motorola's Frankie Andreu. Andreu's job is, well, if the break doesn't get caught, Andreu better take the stage. And he's hungry for a stage win. Frankie has never won a race as a professional in spite of a stellar career. But the break is hungry. The field charging even hungrier.
The gap is just 22 seconds as they complete the first circuit of Hagerstown. There are 2 more to come. The danger man Perron is up there, so too is Frankie Andreu. If it stays like this, whichever one beats the other would be the new leader of the Tour DuPont. Concerned by Raul Alcala, who shouts at our cameraman and probably too to his team man on the right there, Phil Anderson. His other teammate, the world champion Armstrong, is around him. They're taking this chase very seriously now.
At the end of the race, the stars have to go to the front. They can't count on their team alone. They have to punch in and go to work too. So Alcala and Armstrong, 2 of the biggest stars in this sport, have gone to the front.
I couldn't help feeling, though, Brian, you know, with Frankie Andreu in that breakaway, whether in fact Team Motorola would have liked the breakaway to succeed. Here it is, because if Andreu can stay away, he could be in yellow. And this is Steve Bauer, another man from Team Motorola, coming up towards the leaders now. And Bauer is bringing with him another rider of the Pulte team, and that looks like Martinelli. So we now have 7 riders in front, and that is strength to the elbow indeed.
Frankie Andreu's ability to take the yellow jersey depends on a stage win and the time bonus available at the finish line. We've already seen Malcolm Elliott take the jersey out on the road by winning a small sprint. There are 10 seconds for the winner at the finish line. 6 for second, 4 for third.
Fortunes of a professional cyclist. Yesterday, Steve Bauer involved in a crash and lost 3 minutes, all over winning the Tour. Now he's joined the leaders and he's going clear. He wears the jersey of the Powerball most aggressive rider of yesterday. There's no doubt who is the most aggressive rider of today either.
Just a couple of turns from the finish. A couple of dangerous turns, in fact. And these 7 men with the field breathing down their back, and they've been caught now by a pair of German riders, have tucked on to the back. It's all one big gallop. The break is still at the head of the field as they head for the finish line.
So the breakaway of 7 have been caught and wiped out. The riders are all together now as Bauer and Anderson look over the shoulders, but the German riders have hit the front. They've timed it so well. And this is Sven Turtenberg and Raymond Lennick, the former military champion of the world. Both of them coming clear. No sign of the men we expected to see. The young German amateurs have taken part in the battle for the end, and they've got the front exactly where they wanted. On the line, Turtenberg gets it. Lennick is second. Tremendous result for the 2 riders from Germany. But the sprint leaders don't change today. Veenstra is still the leader in that section. Most aggressive rider, definitely Steve Bauer. The king of the mountains after 1 win is Brian Walton. But who is the leader of the Tour, Brian?
We're going to assume that you are the new race leader, Malcolm Elliott. We're still waiting for the official word, but it looks as though you may have your first yellow jersey in this race and the first one for your team.
Well, like you say, we'll have to wait and see. I'm not going to get myself excited or anything. As far as I can tell, yeah, I think I've got the jersey by 1 second from Alcala, but everybody is going to be very, very closely stacked behind me.
And the legs here of Vivian Veenstra, he fell inside the last kilometre, just like David Finney did last time he finished here. Well, you take the good with the bad. Today it was the bad. And Brian Drebber is with him.
Rumor is now, Malcolm, they're calling for you to the podium, and that seems to mean one thing, and I don't think it's to hand you the sprint leader jersey.
In fact, to give me a telling off or something, I don't know. Been up to no good or something in the race.
I think it's a day in gold.
Well, let's go and do it.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
And the stage result, the young German national, Sven Turtenberg, beats his fellow countryman Raymond Leonard with Martinelli. He was in that late break, still got third. Well done. The yellow jersey, who needs that now? It's off the shoulders of Raoul Alter, that's for sure. Malcolm Elliott confirmed by a second over Alcala, the leader now. Julich is third, Perron is fourth. Moncapin of France is fifth. Open highway today, heading across the state of Virginia. And the rain, happily, has gone off about 10 miles outside the town. This is Greg LeMond talking with Joe Parkin. They know each other well. They both come from the city of Minneapolis.
Lance Armstrong, the world champion, stands alone at the top of the cycling planet, wearing that one-of-a-kind rainbow jersey. Moves back to have a chat with the team car, with Jim Akowitz, the race leader, the mechanics, the rolling dugout, and the pit in case they need it. He's already shed his arm warmers and rain jacket. Coming up the other side, it's Jim Copeland of the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department Chevrolet team, and the supporting cast for Greg LeMond, Team Gunn. Clave Roland, Bezo, the rest. These boys have been very quiet so far, and that won't last when the hills come along.
Fun and games here from one of the Italian Polti team riders, and I'll tell you, this team is riding really well this week. Could be the outsiders to take this race out.
We see the blue forks of Team Motorola, and there once again is Lance Armstrong alongside Steve Bauer, who wears the jersey of the most aggressive rider. He's had that for 2 days in a row, and he's been brilliant so far in this year's Tour DuPont. A late addition to the team, substituted for Steven Swart. And Greg LeMond enjoying a nice stroll at this early part of the race, having some fun with a former friend and combatant, Steve Bauer.
Used to ride on the same team, didn't they, Brian, in those days? They were the fun days. And they're having a bit of fun now because it's a long way down to Richmond, Virginia. The rider's in no hurry to take on the rolling roads either. Bauer narrowly missing being a world champion. The Sam is there between a current world champion Armstrong and a twice former world champion Greg LeMond. And this is the face of Raul Alcala from Mexico. The champion of Mexico. He won the Tour of Mexico for the second time at the start of the season, and he's shown the return of his good form in the Spring Classics in Europe. He's been preparing specially to come here and try and take out this race for the second year in succession and the third time out of a possible 6.
Everybody enjoying some socializing. Everybody, that is, until Ron Keeble decides to head up the road, and that's going to send danger signals back through the pack. This guy knows how to ride in a big, big way. A veteran of Team Motorola in 7-Eleven. A guy who labored as a team rider for the most part until he returned to the United States on the Coors Light team, and he's winning once again and liking things the way they are. Reeled back in by the Chevrolet LA Sheriff team, of course. They're the ones that have to do the work today and ride defense for the yellow jersey of Malcolm Elliott.
Chevrolet boys doing a good job there for Malcolm Elliott. They're keeping the race together. That's the job of the team.
4.
Well, in fact, Brian, there's 7 in the Chevrolet LA Sheriff team. The field absolutely compact and nobody behind the race today. But of course, they know that the speed will step up as the last hour of racing comes along.
And our motorcycle camera bike passing through there, Steve Haig. He had an off day yesterday, a little ill. He's coming back, and across the way, Malcolm Elliott is race leader. Steve Haig, the faithful nose gunner for the Chevrolet LA Sheriff team, the guy that chases down the early moves, does his job extremely well. The '84 Olympic champion won the final time trial, which was overshadowed by Greg LeMond's overall victory in 1992 in the Tour DuPont.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, Brian. And Steve Haig is an excellent all-round rider, and he'll be one of Elliott's main men as this race unfolds.
Feeling better today, Steve Haig. Moving forward now, the jersey of Word Perfect, and this is Marty Jemison, the American member of the Word Perfect team, a fellow who went to Europe and labored on his own as an amateur, came back, won the U.S. National Championship last year, wrote him a letter, applied for a job, and got it.
And just 3 hours now they've been out on the open road, and Marty Jemison isn't going to be allowed too much leeway. Well, they're calling this stage Word Perfect Day back in Virginia, in Richmond, and it looks as though the Word Perfect team have been told they've got to come out front and show their team colours, because after all, they're a mainly Dutch team, sponsored by an American company. And it looks to me as though it is again the Chevrolet LA Sheriff boys who are trying to turn the screw that little bit tighter and bring back the leaders, or leader in this case. It's good to see Jemison ride like this. Good aggressive rider. He's having a tough schooling in Europe, and I think he's going to come good this year.
He'll make a terrific pro. Heck, he already is. Showing the colors for his team out there, forcing the others to do the work, the others being the Chevrolet LA Sheriff team and all the rest of the teams represented in this pack.
And job well done by Jemison, but even better done by the Chevrolet boys, because they've caught him and put him back in his place.
Pulte doing a lot of work in this race, too, for their man Abdujaparov. And also, they have a GC contender out there in the race. The man who is leading the colors for them is Andrea Perron, who sits fourth. And, of course, the Kalati riders, they're working hard for their man Wiebren Venstra, who is the Coolmax sprint leader.
And that was an attack by Peter Verbeek, we saw shoot off the bunch. These are the feelers starting now as the riders start to try and get a combination that might work, as they start to test the water and form a breakaway, and to see if they can get a combination that will leave the field behind before they get down to Richmond, Virginia. And another good attack there, and I think it was Nate Schaefer who's got... Nate Reese has gone, or is it Scott Fortner?
Scott Fortner here, of course, the Saturn team holding the King of the Mountain jersey on the back of Brian Walton. And Fortner quickly joined by Franz Maassen. That makes it a little more dangerous breakaway, because Maassen sits in ninth spot on equal ninth, only 12 seconds behind the race leader, Malcolm Elliott. So his appearance off the front will bring things to a quick boil back in the peloton.
Talking about Nate Schaefer there, Brian, that's going back a few years to one of the US's top amateur riders. Anyway, this is Franz Maassen. He's won the Amstel Gold Race in the past, been a champion of Holland. This is hot company here for Scott Fortner. And it's going to get even hotter now, because 4 more riders are coming up on him as well. It's a nice little breakaway they're starting to get going here.
And as quick as that breakaway goes, the field reels them back in on the mostly flat roads under mostly sunny skies now.
We're approaching the city of Richmond, and Flight waving his hands. I think he has a flat tire there.
No, this is a split in the road. There's a median strip, but one rider with trouble is Brian Walton, wearing the King of the Mountain jersey, having taken that one on a small climb in yesterday's stage. There's a Category 4 climb on Taylor Hill, part of the circuit here today. So as the field now makes its way into the capital city of the Commonwealth of Virginia, site of the NCAA Women's Final Four this year, this is a world-class sporting event that they have embraced as one of their own. Noel Shostek of the Kohlstrom team getting some action going as they head for the first circuit. There are also Coolmax points available at the finish line the first time they cross it, and that will be important to Wiebren Venstra, his team leader.
And of course Malcolm Elliott too, because if he manages to take a bonus there, that will increase his lead. Another rider dropping back there from the USA, and I think it might have been Chan McRae, who has a flat tire. He's going to have a hard chase to get back up today now. We have 3 3/4 laps of the city. It's a new circuit here. It's much more interesting than the old one, a little over 3 miles around, but it includes a cobbled hill down in the Shockoe area on Taylor's Hill. This is Steve Bauer pushing the pace now, and he really is aggressive in this tour. He came in with just 24 hours notice, and apart from bad luck on that opening stage when he lost 3 minutes, he's always been in the thick of the action.
That's a 4-man breakaway now. It's also been joined up front by Rossano Brossi of the Pulte team, and Joe Parkin of Coors Light, making it 4 men off the front. The most dangerous, of course, being Steve Bauer in that most aggressive. And now riders one by one starting to join up. This breakaway is history. There's Bauer and Parkin on the left trying to hang out there.
Brassi, World Amateur Time Trial Champion, taking a look over his shoulder and seeing the pack struggling on the cobblestones. And this, as I say, is a great circuit now. And Hincapie's going hard. Hincapie going, joined by Franz Maassen. Dave Mann trying to get on turn 2. Frederic Moncassin is the other Word Perfect rider there. And Nate Reese is latching on the back. So too is Gianvito Martinelli. That's the breakaway. And they've ripped away on that cobble climb.
They're heading for the finish line where the Coolmax points are available, and as they cross it, here they come, and out front it's going to be Maassen and Hincapie. This breakaway dangerous for 2 reasons, because, well, Moncassin is way up there on GC, Nate Reese a bit further down. If this break gets any time, it'll be trouble for sure.
Well, the Saturn team from the United States are mixing it with the top European teams and riding very, very well indeed, because they've still got Brian Walton on their team. And this race has come alive now as the riders turn it on for a marvellous crowd here. This is the breakaway. We're heading back up Taylor's Hill now. And this breakaway as Franz Masson turns the screw a little bit tighter on the climb, and the Poultry riders attacking from the field here with Kolstrop. Malcolm Elliott, the yellow jersey, looking around, a little bit confused here by all of the counter-attacks as he tries to work out which one he should go with.
The breakaway's down to 5. They've lost Dave Mann of Coors Light, but they continue to work extremely well together. Just ahead of the field that starts to swallow them alive. At the front of the chase there, Bobby Julich for the Chevrolet LA Sheriff team.
1 lap to go, the bell is ringing, and it is still anybody's race. Franz Masson is out front on his own because they've got across to that breakaway, all except Masson, who saw them coming. Elliott there in yellow is a long way down the field. He's got ambitions today of repeating the victory he got here 1 year ago, and he could do with the time bonuses. This is Masson, rider who has been the champion of his country, the Netherlands, has won his country's greatest race, watched by 500,000 spectators every year, the Amstel Gold Race. He's won the stages in the Tour de France, and he was very annoyed he allowed Lance Armstrong to slip away in the closing miles when he was with him to win the world title, and Masson finished with nothing.
A circuit just over 3 miles, a long breakaway for Masson if he's going to succeed, but look at the power he's putting into the pedals and the determination that he's showing. That's beautiful form for a professional cyclist. He gets out of the saddle to freshen his legs just a little bit. And look at this, Phil Anderson, a Motorola with a flat tire on the final circuit. That spells trouble for the men in blue and red. He gets a quick wheel change, and the field general is back in action.
What a good change by the Mavic team car there, Brian. They're
Beautiful.
a service car. They pushed him straight back in before that convoy had gone by. He should get back. Now with Masson again, the last climb of this nasty little cobble hill. It's hurting Masson, especially as he has no reserves left at all now. If he were to look over his shoulder, and we can, there they are right behind him. They're closing down fast. Can he hang on if he can get over the top of this climb? But that's Steve Bauer and Martinelli who are coming up, and they've left the field. Now we have 3 at the top of the climb: Masson, Bauer, and Martinelli.
Bauer wearing that Power Bar Most Aggressive jersey well, and Martinelli, we saw him sprint 3rd in yesterday's stage. They have joined Masson, and off they go now, the pack on their heels.
Superb riding, especially by Franz Masson. He'll welcome the company, I think. Maybe now that the 3 of them can hang on to the finish, because this field is fully committed now, and this is the situation at the back of the field. And right at the back there, Nikolai Kuznetsov of the former Soviet Union, now riding, of course, for Russia. And Bauer's gone.
Bauer's
gone. Back to the front, Brian. Bauer has gone.
Unbelievable. Masson and Martinelli now see Steve Bauer, the flying Canadian, is up the road.
And can this be a fairy tale ending now for Steve Bauer, back with the Tour DuPont in the last couple of minutes of racing in the streets of Richmond, Virginia? Here's a man who hasn't won a race for the best part of 2 years. He comes into this race for the Motorola team with just 24 hours notice, and he's really never looked back, Brian.
Steve Bauer, silver medal in the Olympic Games in 1984, then less than a month later, a bronze medal in the World Professional Championship. A terrific rider who's found a late spot on this team. There's one of the Kolstrop riders, Verbecken. But Steve Bauer is way out in front as he just has a few turns to go to the finish. Martinelli and Masson are still chasing him. The pack is chasing those 2.
But Bauer is now back in the lead. He is age 34. Steve Bauer, this rider, has broken clear of the field, and he's hanging on for what will be his best victory, and I don't think he's won a race for the best part of 2 years. And he's slipped the other 2, but they're going to hang on for 2nd and 3rd. The sprint between Franz Masson and behind him is Jovito Martinelli, but this is for Bauer now. And the crowd here have witnessed every pedal stroke of how they've formed this breakaway over the 3 circuits here of Richmond, and how they richly deserve now to cheer home Bauer. He wins. In 2nd place, Martinelli goes clear of Franz Masson. What a great ride today Masson has had. He's tried. Ron Kiefel, his back wheel slipping, has got away from the field. He's going to get 4th. Bauer is the winner. A Canadian wins here in Richmond. He rides for the American Motorola team, and he's delighted. He wears the jersey of the most aggressive rider, and he was the most aggressive rider today. Masson comes up, but not good enough. Martinelli, Franz Masson. And then you see, and look at that, Jameson just slips in. Marty Jameson gets 5th place, and Malcolm Elliott, no bonuses today. He finishes in the pack. There's the stage result. Bauer finishing 8 seconds ahead of his erstwhile breakaway companions, Martinelli and Masson. Good ride, though, by the Americans, Kiefel and Jameson, 4th and 5th. The Powerbomb most aggressive rider, Steve Bauer, for the 3rd day in succession. Let's go down to Brian Drebber and Steve.
Steve Bauer, most aggressive team, most aggressive rider twice, and now stage winner. I would say you're making a pretty impressive debut here in this Tour DuPont.
Well, coming into this race, I was even doubtful, to be in the team, but I told Jim, I'd be in good shape, and I rode a good race in Atlanta. I said I need to do this race, so I guess between me and him, we made a good decision, But the team rode super strong in the circuits, George was away, and we totally controlled behind. And when it came up on the breakaway with 1 to go, I just went for it. I jumped on the Pulte guy, and I saw that Mawson was up the road. And I caught him on the hill, and I just kept going, I figured, I'm not waiting today, I'll just go for it.
Don't blame you, Steve. Veenstra was only 7th today, but keeps his lead in the Cool Max sprint competition ahead of Elliott. King of the Mountains, Brian Walton, survives his lead, and now ahead of Pelliccioni of Italy. Armstrong there in 3rd place. The best young rider, still Bobby Julich, and he deserves that. He remains 3rd overall. Back to the top 2, he's with Jim Okowitz.
Jim Okowitz, Steve says the two of you must have made a fairly good decision considering the way things are going right here as we stand in Richmond.
Well, I think we made a tough decision when we had to take Steve Swart out and bring Steve Bauer in, but I think it proved that we made the right decision today.
I would have to say so. Enjoy it.
Thank you.
And overall in this race, Elliott keeps that 1 second advantage. There must have been time today he thought he wouldn't. Alcala is 2nd, Julich 3rd, Masson now up to 4th, and Andrea Perron is 5th. By the way, Greg LeMond is in 7th place in this race. For Brian Drebber, I'm Phil Liggett saying goodbye from the Tour DuPont. It's really hotting up. The eyes of the fugitive, Vyacheslav Yekimov of Russia, who leads the Tour DuPont by 34 seconds. The white jersey of the hunter of world champion Lance Armstrong. He searches for those 34 seconds. Yesterday at Beach Mountain, Armstrong finished just ahead of Yekimov. If there's ever going to be an outsider winning this race, it could be Andrea Curato. He's 36 seconds off the lead. Yesterday, the riders finished on the top of Beach Mountain. What a great battle that turned out to be. Today, they've come down by motor car, and they're now here in the town of Banner Elk for today's start, 125 miles, taking the riders to a first-time finish in the town of Asheville.
The Pulte team came here in support of the great sprinter, Jamaluddin Abdul-Jabbarov. Instead, they are riding extremely well as a team and challenging for that overall lead. The King of the Mountain, Oscar Pelliccioni, wears the jersey of that competition.
And it soon will be rollout time again in Carolina as we head towards Asheville, a first-time finish for the Tour DuPont. And it is a viciously cruel day with 6 mountains to come today. This is the contour route, and just look at this, peaking many times over that 3,500-foot height. And there's a first category climb in the middle before we finally roll downhill, quite literally, into Carolina. And then we spend the night at the beautiful Grove Park Inn.
Well, Asheville may be new to the Tour DuPont, but back in the early 80s for a couple of years, the nearby Biltmore Estate co-sponsored a huge stage race. We stayed at the Grove Park Inn one night that year, too. Steve Bauer winning in 1982, the great Canadian Ron Heyman in 83. Bauer's still racing. Heyman has retired. We're back racing towards Asheville again here nearly 10 years later.
The Tour DuPont appears to be becoming a battle between the world champion Lance Armstrong and the man in the leader's yellow jersey, Vyacheslav Yekimov, from the Word Perfect team. Now, let's not forget, Word Perfect won this race last year with Raul Alcala. This year, of course, Alcala has joined Team Motorola and rides alongside Armstrong. They seem to have found a man well equipped to replace him, Brian.
Armstrong is doing a super job of leading this team. And oh, here we go, folks. A little nudie shot for you. As Lance Armstrong, with the rain having stopped, decides to put on a dry shirt, take off the raincoat, and he's on his way.
Numbers already on the back as the world champion pulls on a new jersey there.
There's Greg LeMond having the same bit of change of clothing, getting ready to go on. Lance Armstrong on the early rollout. There is a climb right away out of town. Now he's getting his helmet back here from team director Jim Okowitz. Changing clothes, eating on the run, wheel changes, it all happens. 1,050 miles down the road from the start to the finish. We haven't seen it all yet. And the cold eyes of Vyacheslav Yakimov. He is showing terrific form in this 1994 Tour DuPont after a stellar amateur career, perhaps unparalleled in the sport of cycling. With 8 world champion and Olympic titles to his credit, he comes to this race wearing the yellow jersey and with the strong Word Perfect team behind him this year. Last year, of course, Word Perfect won with Alcala. This year, Alcala rides with Lance Armstrong and Sean Yates.
27 miles have been covered now, 1:16 on your screen, and this is Andrea Perron. 4th place overall at the moment for him, and a good time trialist too. And remember, this race will end with a time trial on the very last day. Now we're moving on down to Spruce Pine at 27 miles covered, and the sprint for the prize here taken out by the young German amateur rider Lars Turtenberg. Now, if you're watching earlier in our programs, you'll remember it was his brother Sven who was the sprint winner of the stage when we finished back in Hagerstown.
The Chevrolet LA Sheriff team leading the pace up front right now, and while this race has apparently come down to a fight between Armstrong and Yakimov, remember, when 2 dogs are fighting over a bone, sometimes a third one can steal in there and take it away. A lot of talent in this field, and it's not by any means just a 2-man race with a stage as difficult as this one.
Well, if there's been a problem for the riders on this year's race, it's been the strong headwind that they've combated on most days, and today is no exception. And neither is the beautiful countryside that we are continually racing through, and the European riders always remarking to me about the beauty of this area of the United States. So the whole pack rolling along together. We've had virtually no attacks all day, just the sprint outs. Brian Walton won the first King of the Mountains at Hickory Nut Gap. And an attack going from Motorola. They've got to attack early today, and this is Frankie Andreu. Now, it's no coincidence, I'm sure, Brian, but Mum and Dad are on the race today.
Well, Dad's in the pace car, and Frankie Andreu takes off on the early move. Of course, Motorola has played their cards one at a time like this in the days past. But this time, it's the 27-year-old young man from Dearborn, Michigan, who is without his first win as a professional. He's won some races here in the United States since turning pro, but no big wins in Europe.
Well, this is the climb of Little Switzerland, 47 miles covered, and Frankie Andreu has gone over the top with a lead of 1 minute and 53 seconds. Now the long sweeping descent on excellently surfaced roads. And there's the overall situation. 40th place for Frankie Andreu. He's not out to win the Tour, though. He'd like to win the stage, but he's trying to tempt the word-perfect riders to come and catch him and drain their energy. So perhaps Lance Armstrong can attack later.
As Frankie rolls along in the front of the field, he has to just believe that he can win the stage if he can stay out there, and if his team is able to neutralize the efforts of Word Perfect. We see the Word Perfect jersey, well, one of them at least on the front. They're the ones that have to make the chase. While Frankie's teammates from Motorola can just tuck themselves safely in the middle of the bunch, let others do the work.
And there's trouble at the back of the race here. LeMond has crashed. Look at the dirt on his jersey. LeMond has fallen on one of the tricky descents here. Yesterday, Greg was riding extremely well, slipped a little bit towards the end, but this really is an up and a down tour, quite literally, for Greg, and having difficulty getting on the move again. He should get back to the race, but surprisingly, Brian, his team don't appear to have waited for him.
Well, part of the problem for Greg, the immediate problem, is that his team car is so far back in the caravan because their highest placed rider is way down. They sit 8th in the caravan, so it takes a while for their van to get to him. And then by the time Julian, the mechanic, gets out, there he is, and gets the wheel changed, the peloton has already gone up. Roger Leger giving him a shove, and all Greg can hope for is that his teammates recognize the danger and have slipped off the back to pull him back in.
And over the top of the Black Mountain, and Andreu is still clear. as he keeps that little lead, but they're beginning to hunt him down. 53 miles covered. Greg LeMond knows this area well, and here his team has come back for him, and now are being treated. The French GAN team taking their man back up to the pack. He'll be safely placed back in the field as the race unfolds, and Greg knows these roads so well. He spent a few days down here training just before the Tour DuPont came along. The blood on his arm there you can see, and indeed Greg is now happy to be back in the race. The lone figure of Frankie Andreu trying today to win the stage of the Tour DuPont all by himself. He also is trying to tempt the Word Perfect team to chase him down and hopefully springboard Lance Armstrong to the yellow jersey.
They have to respond to this breakaway. Oh, Frankie taking a slide there, out of control, into the guardrail and down. It doesn't look like he hit too hard, and he's going to be okay.
You all right, Frankie?
Well, he was lucky there. He locked up. He got into the corner and realized that bend was going round a bit too far. I think he's broken certainly the front wheel here, and this is costing him time at a moment, really, when he didn't want to lose any. The bunch are pounding along right now.
The Mavic Tech support guys, they are the neutral support crew for this race. Of course, Frankie's own mechanic is back in the back of the bunch right now. They haven't sent anyone specially ahead for him. So the Mavic guys on the motorcycle take care of it. It's best they do on these tricky descents. This could have been ugly. But fortunately, Frankie's not hurt. He's much more concerned about his bike, but he's losing seconds while he stands there on the side of the road.
It's almost up to a minute, in fact, Brian, and he's wrecked both wheels there, so the best part of $1,000 that fall has cost him today.
Frankie's on his way down the road right now. Let's take another look at just what happened here. Even though the rain has stopped, the road's a little slick. Taking some risks on the descent. He might have hit just a little something there, maybe a tiny tar patch or whatever. In any case, he's off in the weeds, just misses the guardrail, gets it back out into the road. He's a super bike handler from all his years of racing on the track. Not too bad. He's back on the road again.
He's up and riding, and now he's going to do it all again. That was just a dress rehearsal. Don't fall off this time, Frankie. He's the rider who finished 9th in the famous Paris-Roubaix race this year. And what a happy man he was that night when we met him over dinner in Paris, in France. So he enjoys racing well, and one day he will get the big win he seeks.
His tactic of bringing out the Word Perfect team has worked now as Frederic Moncassin leads the entire Word Perfect squadron. We also see some of the Belgian Kolstrup riders up there. There is Marty Jemison of Word Perfect, and here is the man they are protecting, Vyacheslav Yakimov in the yellow jersey. Now he's sitting about 6th or 7th in the field here, but he's taken a lot more wind than Lance Armstrong and the Motorola riders further back. Meanwhile, Frankie still out in front. He's still rolling. No obvious damage.
Well, partially the plan is working. Word Perfect are bringing the men to the front to try and chase down Frankie Andreu, while at the same time they're allowing the yellow jersey race leaders to hide in the pack. This is Adrie van der Poel, who rides for the Kolstrup team, who seem willing to help Word Perfect every day, checking just how far they remain. And there he hands the route back to Franz Massen on the Word Perfect team.
And after a 4.5-minute gap at its largest, Word Perfect has reeled him in. But Frankie's tactic and that of Team Motorola to tire out the legs of the men in the Word Perfect jerseys has certainly worked. They've done a lot of effort. 60 miles Frankie was out there.
A long, long breakaway for Frankie, and it may appear it's come to nothing, but he's made the Word Perfect team chase him down, and that in itself is what he set out to do. And we're back with the beauty of North Carolina as we head now on the Tour DuPont into Asheville, but there's still a little way to go, and the field is regrouped. Well, having said that, they've caught Frankie Andreu, but this now is Phil Anderson trying to attack.
Anderson has tried a couple of times. Just a couple of minutes prior to this move, he tried and was quickly caught. But he's gone again, and he's taken with him Eric Van Lanker of Word Perfect, who came up to join him, and also Andrea Perron of Pulte, and that is a dangerous move because Perron sits 4th on general classification. He's but 2 minutes 38 down on the race leaders. Certainly some response will come here from Yakimov, although Word Perfect has covered the move with Eric Van Lanker.
Well, this is the climb of the Eastern Continental Divide here at 100 miles, and just look at this now. Anderson has dropped back. Now, Brian, he is either exhausted, and I would think that's strange, or Jim Okovich, the manager of Team Motorola, because of the earpiece he carries, might have called him back in the field to help Lance Armstrong. Perron has gone clear. This great cyclist, Andrea Perron, has gone clear of the field. He is not going to take the leader's yellow jersey, but he is going to close the gap, that is for sure. He's been a professional for 2 years. He turned pro after the Barcelona Olympic Games in 1992, and to my knowledge has never won a professional race. And now it is a matter of yards away, and it's going to be the greatest moment of his life. And it's all happening here in Asheville, where the race has never been before. What an absolutely superb finish by Andrea Perron. And this win also, Brian, is going to give the Polte team the overall team lead today in this race. Motorola have made a big mistake today.
Perron's win puts Polte atop the team standings. Sean Yates has slipped away. He'll take second. Here comes the bonus sprint for third. Ekimov leads it, but Yamolodin Abdul-Jabbarov of Polte makes it 1 and 3 for their team.
And so the field sprint is home, and there's a sigh of relief there on the face of Yekimov as Perron takes the stage. He stays in fourth place. Yates is second. Abdul-Jabbarov is third. Let's join Andrew with Brian.
I'm just happy because I won the stage, and if I'm second in the GC, it's okay. Even though I think that Ekimov will win.
And this is how we see the overall situation tonight. Yekimov leads 34 seconds over Armstrong, 36 over Carato. Perron closes in. We're in the Grove Park Inn, and the riders now, all 92 of them left in this race, are making ready for the long ride now down to Charlotte.
Definitely a day for the sprinters, and Malcolm Elliott, who had his days in the yellow jersey, will now revert to his more familiar role, that of the speedster. And of course, Wiebren Veenstra is the guy that wears the cheetah jersey of the Coolmax sprint leader. He's been the fastest at the stages so far.
The last of the long stages today, but it is a long one indeed. It's 132 miles, stage 9, Asheville to Charlotte. Just one mountain, a second category climb at 19 miles, and then a few sprints on the road. This stage is all about money, and when they get to Charlotte, the first prize, $10,000. There you can see it, the climb of Hickory Nut Gorge, a second category mountain, and then all of the mountains are behind them. Lance Armstrong in his white jersey is world champion. And they're always ready, these riders. Incidentally, Brian, Malcolm Elliott forgot his shorts this morning, and if they went forward to Charlotte, he had to borrow a pair before the start.
Well, in borrowed shorts anyway, he'll be good.
Now, these are the prizes today. $10,000 for the winner in Charlotte, and a share in the $5,000 first 3 riders there. And when we also get to Chimney Rock, there's $1,500 for the first man over the line at that point as well. What a day.
Veenstra practicing perhaps his sprint tactics there, wobbling and weaving a little bit in the front and having a laugh with one of his teammates there. They'll be needed to lead him out right alongside Team Saturn. Here's Greg LeMond in a jovial mood heading out. He can sprint when he wants to, when he has to, and maybe for a couple of bucks here. Also having a word with Frankie, yesterday's most aggressive rider. I think we would all have agreed on that choice.
This is the face of Andrea Carato, and I'm told by Andrea Perron this morning that Carato is a very good time trialist. In fact, he was on the same team as Perron, and now he's on a rival team. Jamaluddin Abdul-Jabbarov, the Tashkent Terror. He's the man who will be dreaming of many, many dollars today, because he's once was, still is, possibly the fastest man in the world in the sprint. The world champion Lance Armstrong might be a more of a rest day than him, Brian.
He might get out there and have some fun, too. And, of course, Vyacheslav Yakimov, we saw him lead out the sprint into the finish line. He ended up down in the placings behind Abdul-Jabbarov, but he had a little fun there and showed a turn of the pedals that he can do. Greg LeMond getting some on-the-road adjustments. It's now in 22nd spot, trailing by just under 8 minutes. Here comes Julian out the door of the follow car to make what looks like a brake adjustment here to Greg LeMond's bike. The 3-time Tour de France champion, twice world champion. He trained at the Grove Park Inn and lived there for 10 days in preparation for this race and, of course, for the upcoming Tour de France.
Well, the rollout today will be sort of familiar for the riders, because it was the way they came into Asheville for the finish yesterday. The hills they came up, they go down. The ones they went down, they now have to go up. And Greg LeMond making a little bit of a meal of this. Because the first 6 miles today are neutralized, no racing is taking place. There's no penalties, of course, for hanging onto the cars. A chance to make an adjustment. Now we're heading out, and the climbs are coming. The climb of Hickory Nut Gorge, second category. And there'll be 1 or 2 riders now glad that the hills of Virginia and Carolina are behind them. And look at the elevation of this one, almost 3,000 feet. Dinas Ozil, the Latvian team, have mixed their good luck with their bad luck, but it's good luck this time. First over the top, ahead of Thomas Fleischer of the Colstrop team, and third place Eric Boyer of the Gann team. And Steve Hegg, 1984 Olympic champion, he can still ride a bike.
Steve Hague won the final time trial a couple of years ago. He's always the guy that calls up the team car. I think he just gets bored and wants to talk to Dave Lettieri. So they're having a chat.
Do you have any clothes for me or anything? Okay.
All right, Steve Hague heads back to the field and goes to work, and this lull in the action, taking some time to visit with his team manager, Dave Lettieri, many times a national team member. Some of the local flavor out here in the Western Carolinas. The concessions set up alongside the road. Well, the riders won't stop, but many of the race followers certainly will be enjoying these delicacies.
Into Chimney Rock. It was here where they filmed the Last of the Mohicans, and now we have quite a different tribe charging into town. And this is a marvelous sprint for $1,500, and it's going to go to Germany. And it was a close one because the Polti boys were right there, Abdu Jafarov, and it was close, but the German amateur Lars Turzenberg has taken the $1,500.
Four sprints all told along the way. A day for the sprinters may be an understatement. Here's Raul Alcala covering a move by one of the German riders there. Going out, it's Jörg Paffrath of Germany. And Alcala making the mark here, riding in defense, really, of the so far runner-up in the 1994 Tour DuPont. Leading this breakaway effort here, one of the USA amateur teams. Boy, have these guys had a great ride. Scott Mercer out in front, one of the young stars of the team. Chris Carmichael, of course, the coach of some stars that are out there now, including Lance Armstrong. And we come to Forest City for yet another sprint. And this time, a surprise. Not really a sprinter. Michel Paletti of Mapai Class takes Vibren Veenstra to the line. Veenstra's not worried about him. He's already clinched the Cool Max Cheetah jersey.
But look at the crowd. The whole town there at Forest City turned out to watch the passage of this race. And Abdu Jafarov still smarting at losing $1,500 in Chimney Rock. He's now going to have to plan his next attack. And surely that will come at Shelby, where there's $2,500 for the first man, $1,500 for the second, and $1,000 for the third. And that will be our next point of call for the big bucks.
The last 4 days in the mountains, we've watched Armstrong and Yakimov shadowing one another. Now we're watching all the sprinters doing the same thing. It's follow the leader out there and don't get lost in the crowd.
So this is a big sprint, and Raymond Lennon, he's a professional, but he's a German, and he's won the big prize. This is Frankie.
That's my Sports Center highlight. Frankie was sliding in the hole.
Well, I guess they're talking about the crash yesterday, which was replayed and replayed. Let's take a look at it to remind ourselves just what Frankie Andreu did yesterday during his breakaway. Can't blame anybody, but watch his back wheel.
Just hit a little something there and got out of control. And there he goes for a little tour of the Tules. Thankfully, the guardrail was there. And, well, it was played again and again on Sports Center. And I guess Frankie has a Sports Center highlight.
I go down. Rescued by Cindy Crawford. Mouth to mouth CPR.
Now, let's bring you up to date with that great sprint at Shelby. Raymond Lennart, the former military world champion, took $2,500, another German win. Abdu Jafarov beaten again, but this time gets $1,500. And Pelliccioli, Abdu's teammate, he gets $1,000. That's amazing. 2 German victories so far.
The inevitable breakaway goes, and the inevitable Motorola rider, Phil Anderson. Bicycle Dundee, one of our cameramen, Peter Henning, has called him now, and I think that's going to find its way into the nomenclature.
Well, with all these sprints along the route, we're rather forgetting the object of the Tour DuPont this year, which is, of course, to take the leader's yellow jersey. And the Motorola team are still trying to soften up the field, perhaps, because they want the Word Perfect team to keep on chasing. They need to tire out Vyacheslav Yakimov before that time trial on Sunday. There he is, and he's stalking the Motorola riders everywhere he goes. He told me this morning, the offer, that this will go down as his greatest victory if he could get it, and he's very determined to win it now. And this is George Hincapie dropping back for a word with the boss.
George Hincapie, of course, his only stage win in the Tour DuPont came as an amateur a year ago and was taken from him for infractions in the sprint. So George may be thinking about a stage win here and redemption. And all he's got to do is keep his hands to himself and think about last year's finish at the Homestead. He may be successful.
You see all the bottles, Brian. George is what the French call a domestique. He's going back into the pack to give all his teammates their drinks. And there's an attack gone down the outside. I think it's Fred Rodriguez who's gone. one of the young United States amateur team trained by Chris Carmichael, and they are a good team.
Well, Carmichael trained Hincapie. He trained Lance Armstrong, Scott Mercier, the stars who are in the pro peloton. He's already moved on. That's ancient history. He says this team is a year away from being as good as any of the guys that have graduated already. And indeed, it's Freddie Rodriguez out in front right now, being stalked by Steve Bauer. And so the young Fred Rodriguez and Bauer, who has been a superstar for Motorola this year, most aggressive rider on 2 consecutive stages, 3 actually, once as a member of the team, and they've got a breakaway going in turn.
Bauer's had a great tour. This is Georg Tocznik, who's also had a great tour, first-year professional. We're going to talk about him a lot in the next 5 or 6 years, I'm sure of that. Well, Fred Rodriguez has started something here because the race has got a little bit angry now. Look at the length of the line as they try to close down and bring this race back into order. Number 17 back here is the young Australian Henk Vogels. Started out sick and injured, but he's riding well now. And the Pulte boys are driving the train. They want to keep it all together. They want their man Abdu Japarov, instead of getting 2 second places so far, to go out with the big one at the big finish in Charlotte. And they're all together.
Rodriguez, Tocznik, and Bauer, and their little breakaway is now history thanks to the men in green and yellow there. The Pultes, led by Tocznik, coming up to join that break.
What a great day this is for the Tour DuPont. The leaders having something of a rest day because they can't break clear of the field, and the sprinters enjoying the big prizes along the route. I have to say, too, that the crowds have turned out in their thousands today. It's been great to see the school kids enjoying the passage of this bike race. Attack from Australia, and it looks like, to me, it's the national champion of Australia, Stephen Drake, having a go. They've had a tough tour, the Australians, this year. They've been sick, they've been injured, and of course we know the fate of Brett Dennis in the time trial into Roanoke. He dislocated his hip, and at the moment he's still in hospital back in Roanoke. But he'll be okay, and that's the important thing.
Stephen Drake churning along towards the Queen City and the part of that town that they call Uptown. And here comes the chase out of the field now. And the Australians going to the front to try to control it. They've swept up Stephen Drake, and just as quick the counterattack comes from another Australian rider. That looks to be Damien McDonald, and as they go into town, everyone's together, heading for the finish line, but McDonald with a counterattack has snuck off the front. There is one final Coolmax sprint. When they come into town, it's 3 laps to go, and Damien McDonald will take that. The first victory, really, for the Australian team in this race. They have had so many problems, and it's good to see them on the attack.
Well, this is what Damien did when we went down to Winston-Salem last year, broke away near the end and finished second on the stage, and that, I would think, Brian, is his plan at the moment. He goes through. There are 3 laps of the city here of around 3.2 miles each lap, so there's still time.
Word Perfect and Pulte have chased on after McDonald, and now a counterattack comes out of Ron Kiefel, the ever-present Word Perfect team, and one of the German riders going off the side here, knowing that $10,000 on the line makes for very animated racing. And as the bell starts clanging with 1 lap to go, a German rider just off the front, and everyone in very hot pursuit. Here goes Sean Yates of Motorola, and when he attacks, he definitely draws some attention. Of course, not from his own teammate Alcala, who's holding up the rest.
And this is it for $10,000. Veenstra is on the left of our picture. 1 stage win for him already. And this is going to be a tie for Veenstra. He's heading the field at the moment and has got good speed, but he may have gone too early here. It looks like Momkasan of the Word Perfect team is also there. Abdu Japarov is coming too. And we've got one of the Latvians, Arvis Pizziks, in on the thick of the action too. Pizziks on the far left. And look at that, right up on the outside. Sven Turtenberg, the German who won in Hagerstown, has beaten the fastest man in the world, Abdu Japarov, into second place. And Abdu, for the 3rd time today, beaten by a German national rider. Let's look at that again. Abdu is in yellow, shoulder to shoulder. You'll never rough up an amateur from Germany, it seems. Abdu looks across and says, "Who are you?" And the answer is, "I'm Sven Turtenberg."
Mach's gut, ja?
War sehr gut, ja.
Very good sprint, 2 for you today, and a lot of Deutschmarks, huh?
Yeah, a lot of money today in the race. It was very fast, and the final was a little bit of luck because the others began to sprint very early, and I wait for the last 150 meters, and then I have the most power.
There is Lance Armstrong. Quiet day, in fact, for Lance today. No change in the overall situation. It seems this is going down to the time trial on Sunday. The most aggressive rider, Damien MacDonald, by that late attack on the ride today. The Saturn best young rider is Lance Armstrong, still, of course, in second place overall. The Coolmax sprint leader, unbeatable, Wieben Wienstra. Well, he got beat today in the finish, though, that's for sure. Overall, Yekimov leads from Armstrong, Chirato and Perron. Back to the race, Davis, and they're still together.
That's right. We're coming up to the Salisbury Sprint, mile 21. This is for the Coolmax Sprint jersey. Looks like Wieben Wienstra in the lead. Abdu Jafarov comes around. This could be a prelude to today's final sprint. Abdu takes it fairly easily, but Wienstra just wants to keep him in check.
So it looks like Abdu Jafarov has sharpened his sprinter's legs. He's taken a look there at Wieben Wienstra. They're almost having a chat. I have no idea what language they speak to each other in.
Well, there goes another Russian right by, but it looks like they're communicating something. Clearly, Wienstra does not want to lose that jersey. You know, Phil, he's had the jersey, the Coolmax Sprint jersey, from day one when he won it in Wilmington. So he's been very possessive of that. Doesn't want to lose it here coming into the last days.
And, of course, he's the defending champion from last year as well. Now, this is a little breakaway group they've tried to get going here. The sole Russian survivor is here in the breakaway. Goodson, number 122. Abdu Jafarov is on his wheel. Phil, it's a little tempter.
Yeah, well, Phil, the problem with having a breakaway in a race like this, you would love to make a break into the finish line, but not with Abdu Jafarov and Wienstra.
Correct. Here's Phil Anderson, 3 times a stage winner in 1992. And riding coolly today, a little bit handicapped, of course, because he has to look after his team leader, Lance Armstrong. But he's making a great race himself, Anderson. Currently lies 9th overall in the classification.
That's right. Yesterday he was up there in the finish. And obviously Motorola will have had a clear plan to try to win this stage. They don't have a great sprinter like Wienstra or Abdu Jafarov, so they have to have a very precise plan in the finish today.
Well, this breakaway of 9 men, 40 seconds down at the moment. It's a good move indeed. And there is the chase pack. Word Perfect have riders up here. They've got Eric Van Lanker in this leading group, but he won't do any work, of course, neither will Edwig van Hooijdonk. They'll sit near the back. You can see them with the blue jerseys on, trying to hinder this attack, and the field are hunting them down. So it looks like it's not going to work there.
No, that's right. And there's a lot of teams who haven't been represented in this break, and teams who haven't done very well for the entire Tour DuPont. So they need to get something going. Coors Light, obviously not up there. Chevrolet, LA Sheriffs, the strong American teams are going to pull these guys back, and that looks like that is what has happened.
They're all together again, and Anderson won't be too unhappy with this as we move down to Lexington now. 38 miles covered. The same two in action again. The situation reversed. Wieben Wienstra this time going in ahead of Abdu Jafarov and Sven Turtenberg, who won the stage yesterday in Charlotte, to 3rd place. Vyatoshlav Yekimov, who said that if he wins this race tomorrow, it'll be the biggest win of his career, Davis.
He is so relaxed here, no problem. On the Word Perfect team, catching the draft all day behind those guys as they drive the front of the peloton.
At the beginning, when he took the race lead, I think it's fair to say we thought his team might not carry him to the finish, but they've worked wonders. Let's move on down to Thomasville.
Mile 51, this one's for a time bonus. Wieben Wienstra on the front with Teutenberg following. He takes it easily. And look at that, 3rd place was Ekimov garnering a second over Armstrong, of course.
And that's giving him a 2nd lead now. He's increased his overall lead in this race by a single second with the time trial to come. And this young man, Sven Turtenberg, I think, is going to be wanted by a lot of professional riders next season.
That's right. Looks like 61 miles so far. This is the Archdale Sprint with Michel Paletti taking a little bit of a flyer so he doesn't have to mess with those sprinters from behind. No problem looking back over his shoulder. He's got this one with ease. Soft pedaling now.
Across the railroad, and by the way, Lars Turtenberg was in 2nd place in that sprint. That's the brother of Sven. The Germans are really enjoying this race these last few days. Best part of $16,000 they won yesterday.
Look at Thomas Graven making a move. Dives off way, way away from the rest of the field. He's a local boy, North Carolina man. He would dearly love to win this stage, at least make it look good trying.
As you said earlier, Dave, it's the Chevrolet LA Sheriff's team. They need a stage win. They were the team champions last year, and this year they've led the race with Malcolm Elliott. But even so, icing on the cake will be a stage victory.
No, that is for sure. As we saw from the back of the pack, they're not too concerned with Thomas. This race will heat up rather quickly as they get into High Point, but Thomas is making a good show of it. Very relaxed, very confident riding.
Well, everybody's now, as the cyclists say, burying themselves. You see their shoulders are arched. They're pulling themselves closer to the handlebar stems. So the chase is on.
And no question, undoubtedly, it will be Ekimoff's team, word perfect, at the front, bringing it home. And there's Thomas Craven coming in the first time towards the finish, but everyone is on him. Look at that, Phil.
Yeah, what a shame. 3 laps actually, just around 3 miles to go here in High Point, and they've worked out a very nasty finish here. Just before the line, you have a sharp turn and an uphill climb right to the line. There's the turn, and the clever ones will have looked at the map last night and decided where they might want to attack.
Well, it certainly looks good. Thomas Craven at least gets to go across the line the first time through High Point, with Ron Kiefel just behind. A little bit of a split there. Van Hooydonk leads up for his teammate Ekimoff, following up with the group.
There's the official 3 laps to go. As Motorola launched an attack, it looks like George Hincapie's gone through. So, as we go into the 3 laps of the finishing circuit, an attack is on. The final closing circuit here in High Point of the Tour DuPont, and the field once again have got their quarry in sight. The attack by George Hincapie looks as though, Davis, it's coming back under control. There's the bell. 1 lap to go.
1 lap to go. Everyone is very much wanting to catch up if they're a sprinter at this point. Look at this. No one wants to take the pace. They're looking back. They know they've been caught. This is the most exciting part, I think, still, of a flat stage, is the fact that everyone needs to be at the front. The best sprinters have to get up towards the front. But men like Sean Yates, they don't have a sprinter specifically with Motorola. They better have a good plan.
In the closing miles, though, Davis, it's these annoying little attacks which really ruin the sprinters' hopes, isn't it?
That's right. But you know, Phil, the speed is just so high from the field because everyone wants to attack. And you see them, they're singled out. The pace is very high. It looks like Abdi Japarov's teammate on the front of Polteman behind these 4 leaders. Ron Kiefel from Coors Light, we've seen him all day at the front. Coors Light would love to do something here, but they don't have a sprinter, losing Scott McKinley after the mountain stages. So the teams with no sprinter, they're trying to think, I got to get somebody ahead of this field because there's too many fast gentlemen to take to the line together.
Well, we're back to sprinters' position. They just wiped up the breakaway. Hank Vogels was the Australian in that 4-man leading group. Now another attack going down the outside. Coors Light are very annoyed. They haven't had a stage win. They're going again.
Yeah, it looks like David Mann. He's going off the front, but right on him. You see everyone just files in behind him, and that, of course, is because of the drafting. If you can catch a rider's draft, then they can't really get away from you on a flat stage like this. So very, very frustrating. That's why you see them darting right and left, is to try to break that draft and establish a lead.
And watching these pictures, David, it looks to me as though 2 teams have definite plans here on the circuit. The blue jerseys of Motorola, who've been in every move since we came onto the circuit, and also those yellow jerseys of Pulte, who are desperately fighting to keep this pack together for Abdi Japarov.
No question about it. As we said, Abdi Japarov very, very frustrated in this year's Tour DuPont. He would love to win the stage, and his teammates would love for that to happen. Perron, of course, winning the stage into Asheville, and you can see that Pulte team just driving the front. There's only 2 of them, but these men are very, very strong, and this is what they do best, set up the finish for Abdi Japarov.
Well, this is the Pulte rider, Bruno Rossi, at the front here, a team time trial world champion and a new professional rider, trying to set a pace quick enough here now to stop anybody having the strength to get by him until it's time to launch Abdu into the sprint finish.
That's right, and of course, this sprint is a very, very tricky finish. They've got a hard turn, so it really will be up to the very, very lead riders to take it all the way through that last corner. So these guys, Abdi Japarov is buried somewhere. We don't see him from our picture here, but you can just see how fast these guys are driving the race, because as you said, if they can make it fast enough, no one will be able to get out of Abdu's grasp, and if he can take it through that last corner, he has a very, very good chance of winning the race.
And that's another secret of the sprinters, isn't it? You stay near the front, but you try to stay inobtrusive and out of sight.
That's exactly right, Phil, because for a sprinter, any energy spent as this rider is doing on the front of the peloton, is energy lost when he makes that absolutely explosive effort in the final 200 meters. So a sprinter will stay behind as many riders, but close to the front as he can until he makes that determination that this is the point that I should go. As they come just barreling along, you can see how fast it is just by the fact that they are just singled out, front wheel to back wheel.
And we've got 3 Pulte riders here, and I think it's 3 Motorola riders. So the team tactics, which they'll have discussed last night, they're both putting into action now the plans which they hope will bring them success. It's a simple format for Pulte. Keep the pace high, keep everybody else behind them, and hopefully Abdu Jafarov will do it. But you see, now we've got the Motorola riders, and they're launching an attack.
Right, well, or either an attack or they're trying to develop a train, Phil, where they get their riders lined up in such a position that no one is able to get in between them. So it's Motorola, Motorola, Motorola. If they can take their team into the last corner, even without a sprinter, then they're in the best position to win this race.
Well, there's a lot of head turning going on. I could see what they were trying to do, David, but I don't think they succeeded. They only got 1 or 2 riders up there.
Well, and that's the problem. You're looking back, you want to make sure that your man is on the wheel. Look, as Steve Bauer goes by, but look who's on him, Abdu Jafarov and Raul Alcala. And look what's happened. Motorola feels that this is okay. They're letting them go. They've created a break and let that gap happen.
And the finish line approaches in this stage of the Tour DuPont. There are 3 riders just ahead of the field. 2 from Motorola, Steve Bauer up front, and Raul Alcala goes as well. And taking his wheel is Jamaluddin Abdu Jafarov, and they really must feel their luck is out today because they know the speed of Abdu Jafarov, and he's forced Alcala to take the lead, and that is perfect for him. Alcala would have loved to have been behind the little man from Uzbekistan. I think Bauer, who's made all of the running, is now out of it, quite frankly, as they turn for home. And Alcala is first in. Bauer goes again, and Abdu goes on the far side. Now, is this a chance to redeem himself? He's been beaten throughout this race and wanted the stage win so much, and now it's a formality. Abdu puts his head down and sprints to the line, beaten yesterday by German amateur Sven Turtenberg for the big prize, but he gets the $1,750 on the line. He beats Raul Alcala there, and so Jamaluddin Abdu Jafarov has got the stage win everybody here has wanted to see. Alcala in the same time is second, Bauer is 3 seconds back in third, leading home the main field. The closing stages of the time trial in the Tour DuPont, and this is Andrea Curato, who is just 2 seconds behind Lance Armstrong overall. Armstrong in second place, Curato is third. He needs a good ride. Here is Greg LeMond now, to the cheers of the crowd, making his way up towards the start.
Greg would love to make a statement, Phil, with today's ride. A statement not only to himself, but to the public, that perhaps he is back. And, of course, Andrea Perron, who's in fourth. He's had a great ride here. Won the stage into Asheville. Should be strong today.
Now let's see how Team Motorola are going in their quest to take the team race away from Pulte. 37.51, the time for Frankie Andreu. That might be a good time. It could be part of the team counters. Let me remind you, in fact, that it's the first 3 riders of each of the teams who count towards the overall team time for the day. That was a glimpse of Malcolm Elliott out on the road, but not doing a good ride, I can tell you on the checks. This is now Steve Bauer leaving the start house. As we look back now at Steve Bauer, the marvellous moment for him at Richmond, his first win for almost 2 years, and Bauer was back.
I've got to say, Phil, with watching Steve Bauer here, he's had such a great ride this year, and he was one of the great riders of North America. It's so pleasing to see him do so well as Malcolm Elliott comes across the line. 36.21, good time.
A good time, and Malcolm Elliott is a good time trial rider. I can tell you right now, though, that news coming in that Steve Bauer is the best time at half distance thus far, as Greg LeMond makes his start.
Make them hear you, folks. Greg LeMond!
Well, Greg's been training so hard with his specialized equipment, telling him just how much watt power he's generating. So clearly he knows how fast he needs to go. Whether his legs will cooperate, that's the big question.
Well, as you know, Davis, you never quite know whether you're going to do a good time trial until you're actually out there and whether you settle in quickly, do you?
And he said he felt good warming up for this time trial, but it's a whole different story when you get out on the road as Raul Alcala takes the start.
Well, here's the man who won this race and increased his overall lead in the final time trial. He knows all about winning the last stage of the Tour DuPont. and indeed winning the race itself. The arrival of Bauer, and this is going to be the best time so far. This, I would say, is Bauer's finest time trial for years and years. This man has come back, believe me. He comes up the steady climb towards the finish. He can see the clock as we can. One goes on the screen, 34:31 is his time, and Bauer is the new leader.
Look at that time spread we've seen. Elliott, 36 minutes. Bauer's up to 2 minutes ahead of a lot of the top riders.
Warm-up time for Lance Armstrong. The D-Day is coming now for the man in the World Championship jersey and the man in the yellow jersey. Now we're down to the last 4 men, the top 4 overall in this race to make their start. This is Andrea Perron about to go. A good ride by him, you know, and he could be second or even first overall by the end of the day. He's conscious of that.
Raul Alcala out on the course. Raul's such a dynamic rider and such a great time trial. But, you know, Phil, he was really let down in Roanoke. I think he expected to do much better. He lost over 3 minutes to Ekimov. So today, perhaps we'll see a good ride, but perhaps with Raul, it's so much up to his mind frame. What he wants to do, he generally does. And I don't know if he really wants to do it today or not. Greg LeMond coming up to the finish line. Let's look for the time. This is a very good indicator of just how strong Greg LeMond is in his comeback attempt. Oh, the time is coming as Greg rolls across the line. Clearly one of the most favorite riders of the crowd. 36:47. That's going to be very, very disappointing for Greg.
I think that will be lucky to make a top 20 finish. In fact, Davis, this is Andrea Curato. He will start 2 minutes behind Perron. We've just seen leave. Curato and Perron were teammates on the same Italian Gatorade team last year. They went their separate ways this season, so they are now rivals, but they know each other's abilities very well indeed.
Andrea Perron out on the course and out of the saddle. Perron's a relatively new professional like Lance Armstrong, riding very well in America. He hasn't had great results in Europe, but as we've seen, some riders, they tend to come to America and they just ride really, really well. This hill looks rather stiff. Halfway split, 17:01, fastest of the day so far.
Well, there, the gauntlet is down again now. The rest are going to have to go better than that. This is an Olympic silver medalist and a World Championship gold medalist in time trialing. Now Armstrong, the big moment has come, Lance. Can you take on the Tour DuPont and win it now? It's like going to the dentist when you put your bicycle in the start house. There's no turning back, Davis.
No question with that. Whoopla, having a problem there. Now, this is what you do not want to have happen when you're on the start line.
No, and in fact, these are tense moments for Lance now. And the answer is just stay cool, let everybody else handle the machine. The mechanics have already got it ready. So now Lance must contain himself, compose himself. He will not want to think about what happened a year ago when he started 2 minutes in front of Raul Alcala and was passed by Raul Alcala. Now he's going to show us, I hope, that he really has improved in his time trialing ability. He's a world champion now, and he is well aware of that, David.
Yes, no question. He has so much more confidence, and he's worked so much on his time trialing. He spent a good deal of the winter changing the position on his bicycle so that his power to the pedals was much, much better.
In Roanoke, it was a marvelous time trial for him, but the course may have favored him better because it was a mountainous one. He finished third there. But Yakimov did beat him on that occasion, and now Armstrong hopefully will reverse that. There are time checks every 4 miles for the riders, and by the way, there's an equal first back at the finish now because Jean-Francois Bernard has come in with the same time as Steve Bauer, but in fact they are separated by tenths of a second, and Bauer is the better.
Lance just looks so smooth now. He looks great when he's pedaling on the bike. Last year he was a lot more up and down. This is Andrea Curato. Curato, of course, knows how fast he has got to go to beat Lance Armstrong. He's getting split from his team director.
And in fact, what they're saying to him, you know, is that he is losing ground to the rider who is in front of him, Andrea Perron. And he can't afford to lose too much time because he'll lose his third place overall.
No,
Here we go, down to the start. The last of the 92 men now. The sun is high in the sky. There's a very strong wind. It's beautifully warm. The countdown for Vyacheslav Yakimov, who has told us this last few days, if he wins this, it'll be the greatest victory of his career. Now, it's all down to the ability we know he's got.
He has got such great ability, Phil. He has world records. He's the fastest man at short distances. He's utilized his pro career to get great at the long distances.
And the arrival of Raul Alcala, and it's not a very good time for the man who really is a good time trialist on his day, 36 minutes and 6 seconds. Greg LeMond, though, were you happy?
I thought I kind of felt a little bit more recuperated before this time trial, but after about 3 kilometers, I knew I was on a pretty bad day.
Disappointed or not? Is that a fair, or is that another word?
Yeah, I'm definitely disappointed. I wanted to win this stage.
Andre Curato out on the course, halfway split, 17:01, Phil, so right on target.
The same as
Andre Perron, that's right.
The same as Perron, exactly. That is amazing. The two riders are locked together, equal distance. They're still 2 minutes apart on the road. Here is Perron. We've come to really like this man over the last few days. He's shocked us when he spoke fluent English. He said he loved America. 35:10 his time and a good ride. He could well hold his 4th place easily with that performance.
Look at the split from Lance Armstrong, 16:53. Lance is having a great ride. Here comes Curato to the finish.
And this is going to be crucial because he's really suffered over the last 8 miles. You saw his face. The time, 36:12. And I think he's conceded his 3rd place overall to Perron. That ride completely collapsed. Now to Yekimov. With these defeats of Vyacheslav Yekimov out on the open road. Because this is the man now who's going to have to hang on to Lance Armstrong. Halfway split, he's up on Armstrong.
Look at that time. This man is so good at these events. He's known what he's had to do. And here comes Lance Armstrong through the finish. Lance is pulling. He's got a great crowd behind him today. Look at that spurt.
And look at the time. 3rd on the day, but of course that puts him best of the men that matter to him. The riders in front are in fact Bauer and Jean-Francois Bernard. But let's go to the end now. Listen to the crowd. Vyacheslav Yekimov comes home, and the best time, 34 minutes, 3 seconds. He wins the race. He wins it overall ahead of Armstrong, Perron, Curato, and Tochnik. The result of the overall. Let's go to Davis with Yekimov and Armstrong.
Was there ever any doubt in your mind coming in today that you wouldn't be able to win this overall DuPont race?
Thank you very much. When I won last time trial on Monday, all week I was thinking about this Sunday. Every day, after every stage, I was looking at the map. I was imagining the circuit, imagining the profile. So I was unbelievably ready for this day.
I had anticipated winning the race, and I wanted to win, and I think that the team was really confident that we were going to win with either myself or whether Raul. So, you know, I have to be happy with what I did because I gave it my best, and it just wasn't enough. Yekimov is certainly no slouch. He's one of the best riders in the world right now and has been for several years. So, I mean, the reality is that, you know, he was the better man this last 10 days.
Heck out, Lance, there is a consolation. Team Motorola did win the team on the very last day, going ahead of Faulty. For Davis Finney, I'm Phil Liggett. Until the next time, goodbye to you all.
Tonight on